Coastal regions of Japan on the west coast are under a tsunami warning after a powerful 7.5 magnitude earthquake struck in the west of the country, and there are reports of tsunami waves actually coming ashore. According to the US Geological Survey, at least 9 aftershocks have rattled the region, including one with a magnitude of 6.2. So far, there are no reports of anything abnormal at the nuclear plants in the region. We're monitoring that. We'll have more on that story as it becomes available. But CNN's Hanako Montgomery joins us live from Tokyo with the very latest on which waves have hit and also the larger ones you expect to see.
Hi, Max. So as you mentioned, we saw a huge earthquake, a 7.5 magnitude earthquake hitting western Japan. A tsunami warning has been issued for the entire west coast of Japan, specifically in the city of Noto in Ishikawa Prefecture. They're under a major tsunami warning. They could see a tsunami waves of measuring up to 5 meters, which would be very, very dangerous for many of the people in that region. We also know that it was a shallow earthquake with depths of around 10 kilometers. That's around 6 miles. And what this means is that with shallow earthquakes, they could trigger potentially more powerful and more dangerous tsunamis. So really, we're just watching what potential damages could be caused because of these tsunamis that roll in, Max.
We're getting very little information because obviously they're dealing with a crisis right now. But the initial images of the earthquake seem quite severe as well. Roads cracked, buildings collapsing, and, you know, quite frightening scenes within bowling alleys and the like where people are hiding under tables.
Yeah, we know that 32,500 homes have lost power in Ishikawa Prefecture. The Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has also warned residents who live on the western coast of Japan near the epicenter to flee and to evacuate to higher ground. We know that the Japanese government is trying to confirm the extent of this damage, try to evacuate people who might still be stuck and potentially be harmed by the tsunami. But we're still waiting to confirm some of the details, the extent of this damage, just who else might be potentially trapped as these tsunamis come within the shores of Japan.
It's obviously a very developed nation. How are capable of the buildings in that region of withstanding the earthquake and then any tsunamis that come in?
Yeah, as you said, Japan has a very robust emergency plan. Also, a lot of the infrastructure, the buildings, the towns are very much capable of withstanding tsunamis and earthquakes. But we do know that this earthquake happened at 4:10 p.m. local time on New Year's Day. This is a time when many people are still in their homes. They could be in their family homes with their friends, with their loved ones. And what that means is that it's quite difficult to access people. Even though they might be in their homes, it might take them a while to evacuate to higher ground. And of course, it doesn't necessarily mean that all homes have these earthquake capable homes or that just withstand these really big tremors. Even here in Tokyo, we felt the tremors. So to imagine what the people in Ishikawa Prefecture, many others on the western Japan coast are feeling is really quite indescribable.
Okay, we'll be back with you. We'll get more. Hanako Montgomery in Tokyo. Thank you for now. I want to look a bit more about the nuclear plants that are based in that area. What risk is there to them? I'm joined by Asby Brown. He's the lead researcher with Safecast, an independent radiation monitoring organisation. Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, what have you seen in terms of the nuclear threat, as it were, right now?
Of course, during the first few minutes after the earthquake and the tsunami warnings, there was not a lot of information coming in, but the Japanese nuclear regulator quickly announced that there were no abnormalities reported from any of the nuclear power plants in the region. The region includes the largest nuclear power plant in Japan, the Kashiwa Karezaki plant, which is near Niigata, which is fairly distant from the epicenter of the earthquake and the area of the largest tsunami risk.
Yeah, in terms of, we're looking at a map right now. How close are they to the coast? How might they be affected by tsunamis?
Basically, almost every Japanese nuclear power plant is built right on the coastline. This was the case for the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, which had the horrific accident and meltdowns in 2011. As a response to this, eventuality, almost every nuclear power plant in Japan then underwent strong upgrades, reinforcing of seawalls, etc., specifically to protect against tsunami risk. So I think this tsunami was not as large as the one in 2011, but I think this was one possible test of how effective those measures have been.
And we've seen some pretty dramatic pictures about the damage coming from the earthquake itself, but presumably they've made the same reinforcements as they have for tsunamis with earthquakes.
In terms of houses and other buildings, yes, there have been progressive retrofits and reinforcements for seismic risk, certainly since the earthquake in 2011, but also prior to that. Most of what we see in terms of damage and collapsed houses are older buildings which were not subject to those kinds of reinforcements. I expect we'll see a lot of buildings damaged. Fortunately, the region is not heavily populated where the highest risk was, so I am cautiously optimistic that we will not see a lot of death or other serious injuries.
Can I just ask you about this warning we've had of a 5-meter wave? How concerned are you about that as opposed to the 1-meter ones that have already come in?
It was quite alarming. This is the largest tsunami warning that we've had since 2011. As you know, perhaps that tsunami was 10 meters or more, so it was much higher. Still, it's a very remarkably large tsunami. We'll see what the actual effects of that have been. Again, the video images and visual images are coming in, trickling in. We haven't seen a lot. We've seen some fires, particularly on the Noto Peninsula, which is the area of the highest risk. It's a peninsula north of Ishikawa Prefecture, jutting out into the ocean. So that was very alarming. All of us were very, very concerned about that. Hopefully, in terms of power plants, nuclear power plants, the damages won't be too big, but we expect to see a lot of damage to coastal structures and communities.
As you say, the last one was something like 10 meters. So if the 5-meter one comes in, you're pretty confident that the power plants will be able to withstand that?
My confidence is very cautious because I've been to several of these power plants. I've seen the seawalls. There are always unknowns and other things that can happen. Perhaps you're aware that other power plants, not nuclear power plants, but thermal power plants, coal-fired power plants, are also now offline. There's no big reports of damage to them, but they all are automatically taken offline. So the affected communities in many places are without power, and it's a very cold winter right now. So that's a big concern as well.
Which is the worry, isn't it? Because we're not getting the information right now. We're just relying on the pictures which were streaming at the time, effectively.
Yes, it always takes time for a full picture to be, gotten for this sort of thing. So far, no terrible disasters reported. But in terms of the nuclear power plants, because most of these power plants in Japan were taken offline, turned off after the disaster in 2011. A few in the further western part of Japan have been turned back on, but I don't think any of these in this region are operating. So that absolutely minimizes the risk of any kind of meltdown or serious accident like we saw in Fukushima.
OK, Asby Brown, really appreciate your time today. Back with you if you get more. Thank you so much.